Hey there guys, today we're taking a look at the brand new release of the Scaletrains CSX ES44s, specifically the Pride in Service Unit number 1776, Spirit of our Armed Forces. So one thing to preface before we get too far into it, I'm going to cover this my usual style, except we're going to do a spark notes on detail, because these locomotives, while phenomenal, are going to be covered to death, as in I expect within a week to see majority of HO videos covering these three locomotives. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to give you my initial thoughts on the decoration, then we're going to jump right into running and the sound. So we'll give you the Spark Notes tour, but it'll cover all the stuff you want to see or had any burning questions about. So without further ado, let's get started. Alright, so first impressions right out of the box. This is absolutely gorgeous. This is, I'll borrow the tagline, this is not only the definitive ES44, but the definitive CSX 1776. This is absolutely gorgeous. I've been fortunate to see 76 in transit a few times. I believe in the Facebook promos, they said it took about 500 passes per car body with the paint pads. I can believe that. This is absolutely well done. The digital camo is notoriously hard to recreate, but Scaletrains has done it. And one nice thing about it, the real locomotive is not perfect. I'll throw some pictures in here so you guys can see. There's a lot of funky lines and a lot of unique surprises hidden around the locomotives. Like case in point, one of the latches on the engineer's side, there are dog tags embedded in the paint. So, of course, you won't really get this in HO scale, but the locomotive is loaded with Easter eggs and all sorts of hidden detail across it. And Scaletrains has thankfully covered all the bases you want to see, from the side decals to the rear banner to the cab windows up front. We're going to take a look at it all, mainly focus on the decoration, because this is a special locomotive. We all know the Scaletrains detail is the best in plastic currently on the market. So I'll give you the quick tour on that, but the decorations are what really is going to set this locomotive apart. Okay, so we're just going to take a little close-up of the front end, and I'll bring the camera back so you can take a look at the whole car body. Alright, starting up top, what all do we have here? Rooftop, you got your AC controls, you got the PTC antenna array. This is awesome. This looks extremely well done, especially for the prototypes. Going on the nose, we have the illuminated number board with 1776, yellow windshield wiper covers, all the grabs. So moving on down, so while I've never been the biggest fan of CSX Wine 3 or Wine 3B, the colors are absolutely nailed here. The royal blue and the gold look fantastic. The transition with the stripe to the camo looks really, really clean. Scaletrains did this right. I mean, they had the paint diagrams, they worked with CSX closely, so this is going to be the best model on the market. For gray, MTH got it close. Scaletrains, I'm pleased to say, has got it handrails, really close paint match. They look fantastic. Going on down, this is where the fun begins, because this has probably the most detailed front pilot I've seen on the locomotive. From the MU cables up top, the train line cables, all the electrical connections, these look really, really good. I like the fact they got all the paint end caps correct, from the green on the MU cable to the red. This looks fantastic. And the cool part to me, they got it right, of course, is the star decal that goes on the front and alongside the cab. So that's all present. It looks fantastic. No complaints from me. Alright, now we're on the side of the engine. I'm going to do a broadside pan just so you guys can see what you're going into. Obviously, the highlight here, the Spirit of our Armed Forces, is really well done. It's crisp. 1776 and the lightning bolt look fantastic. One thing I do like, normally this is not operating, but they have the DPU running mode light painted orange. It looks really clean. It's not overly done. I don't see a ton of overspray. It's nice. One thing I was curious how they were going to handle was the windows, because on the real 1776 and 911, 3194, these are all behind the cab glass, you know, just a vinyl decal. This is really well done. Alright, so moving on down, we begin the transition from the blue and gold to the camo, and we're going to use a little bit of fill flash so you guys can see what the locomotive is going to look like under a variety of lighting. I'll take the flash away for a second so you guys can gauge the paint. They got this really, really close. The prototype is kind of a weird grayish green. I mean, we saw Lionel botch the green when they went for gray. MTH got it close. Scaletrains, I'm pleased to say, has gotten it very, very close. I've been fortunate to see this locomotive on the road, photograph it in a variety of lighting situations. They nailed it. So even if you wanted to do a night flash bomb, it looks right, or a daytime raster shot, they got the paint right. So the kicker for the Scaletrains locomotives compared to the others on the market, They were the only other company, minus Lionel, to get the licenses for all the charities. So you've got Wounded Warrior Project, Operation Gratitude, Blue Star Families, and one more I can't quite make out here, along with the First Responders Children's Foundation. One really awesome thing about the Scaletrains effort, all the charities on this locomotive and that are involved with the real locomotive get a portion of proceeds from the purchases. So everybody who rated the pre-order list, you're helping out a charity, you can feel good about purchasing this locomotive, which is one thing I do appreciate about Scaletrains and their company mission. So we'll take it to the end real quick. The Honoring Our Veterans is printed really well. It's crisp. Everything looks really ship shape. The one thing I'm really pleased to see them get right is the rear banner. So out of all the options on the market, this is the best I've seen done. I'll bring up a photo I took of the real banner on the locomotive. They did a really, really nice job. The sum gave all is really crisp. The flag background looks great, and the kneeling soldiers, it fits the bill perfectly. They nailed this decoration. And of course, going on down the back end, you've got the POW MIA logo and the CSX boxcar logo. So while we're back here as well, we'll take a look at the rear detail. They didn't leave anything off. It looks fantastic. The spare knuckles are there. All the electrical connections are there. One cool little detail is they have a little freestanding chain on the rear MU cable that kind of links up to the rear deck plate. So just like with the brake chains on the side of the locomotive that are static, but they have a little gap so you can move, same story here. And then of course there's a Scaletrain knuckle coupler, which will probably get replaced at a KD just to make operations easier. All the airlines look really good, the MU cables, everything you could want on this locomotive is here. And if that was showing up a little dark, I'll use the fill flash just so you guys can see a little bit better. One operational note while we're on this side, and a buddy of mine who got these locomotives alerted me to the problem, these rear sand lines can sit really, really close to the railhead. On this one, I think I'm clearing it, but if you be aware, you may have an issue where they scrub or hang low on the track. So just letting you know, going ahead, something to look out for. So going in a little bit closer, the only issue shooting with the black underframe on a black tabletop, the details kind of blend in. So just to take a look at the truck detail, this is absolutely awesome. You can see the underbody piping peeking through, the brake chain detail, the 87:16 ratio printing on the side of the trucks, with the rotating bearing caps, Scaletrain staples. This is extremely well done. This is, in the advertising campaign, they said this was the definitive ES44. I can't argue that. I've got flavors from a variety of companies, and this is by far the most detailed. So rolling on down the side, the story is the same. One thing I did leave off earlier, of course they include the safety striping, so you do not have to apply that on your locomotives. Fuel tank detail, per always, really, really good. All the air tanks, got extra piping running up to the walkways, sight glass, stop switch, everything's here and present and looks fantastic. And of course, one thing I neglected to mention earlier, the most important detail for the voice of this locomotive, a nice Leslie S5T sitting up top. Per the horns, one thing to note, each of the locomotives, prototype-wise, have their own version of a RS5T. 1776 is a little different. 911 and 3194 have more of an old Seaboard system and Family Lines tune. So to wrap up on the engineer side, everything looks really, really good per usual. You're going to hear me say that a lot in this review, and I'm not embellishing it because this really is a fantastic looking locomotive. So again, just to cover everything, you got the PTC antenna array on top, the flag and the cab windows, 76 cab printing looks really, really good along with the Armed Forces logo. One thing I'm very appreciative of, because I had to be that nerd and photograph it, the builder's plate's accurate and it looks great. That's enough rambling on detail and decoration. Overall detail, this is the best plastic ES44 on the market to date. This is phenomenal. It weighs a ton, and it looks brilliant. Decoration-wise, they nailed the camouflage for 1776, something not easy to do, but I'm thankful to say all the extra steps and all the extra pad printing paid off because this locomotive looks phenomenal. Alright, so I want to apologize in advance. The test track isn't exactly the most state-of-the-art thing in the world, but we're going to cover the bases y'all want to hear, what you might be curious about, and just what you're getting on the factory Scaletrain sound file. So like any locomotive, it's address 3 to get it started. Here's the headlight, very bright. Ditch lights, also very bright. I'll give you all a head-on shot so you can see what you're getting into. As said earlier, the number boards do fire when you turn on the prime mover, along with the walkway lights along the side, front, and rear. So we'll kick things off with the bell. So that's the factory RS5T. Now there's one thing I wanted to address on the horns, just so some of you know what you're getting into. When these locomotives were unveiled, the first video, and I believe it was either the live stream or one of the comments, stated that each of the locomotives would have their own horns recorded. This, I'm afraid to say, is not 1776's horn. I was fortunate to see it leading. I'll throw a little clip of that in there so you guys can hear, but... that just does not do the same effect. And I can go ahead and tell you 911 and 3194 have louder seaboard tuned RS5Ts that sound completely different. So that is the only RS5T on the sound file, just so you're aware. So if you have a lot programmer and you're comfortable making custom horns, I would suggest you do that if you want completely accurate Leslie's for this trio. Alright, so one thing I wanted to do with the sounds metered again is go through all the horns on the decoder. One thing I did do is I changed the E-bell to a quieter one, so when we go through all the horn sequences, it's not going to get on your nerves too bad. But as soon as I can figure out how to unmap that sound function, it's going off this engine. But that's just my taste. So, you change the horns via 163, bells are 164 on your CV list. So, we'll start out 163 to a value of 0. It's one of the better horns on the decoder. That's your options for horns on the decoder. The bells, there's a wide variety of new steel bell recordings and some E-bells, but we're going to save time and you can just kind of peruse those on your own. I think my only, I guess, really nitpick on the sound is we didn't get the 3 custom horns that they mentioned from factory. So realistically, the S5T on here is pretty good, but you're probably better off creating a custom one or getting someone to do it. Other than that, if you're just wanting to run a basic Gevo horn, you've got 2 good options on this decoder. So that's just what I would do, messing around with the sounds. So one thing I do love about Scaletrains that I really hope the rest of the industry catches up to, keep alives, because especially with ESU decoders, it's nice to be able to do this. If you're running at a club and want to change tracks or have something go wrong, you've got that insurance of power and you don't have to completely restart your locomotive from the ground up. So with the locomotive muted, you got a little listen at the drivetrain. It's the Scaletrains standard stuff. It's really smooth, it's quiet. It's one of the best on the market in terms of a plastic model. I can't say enough for it. When you made it with the Lock Sound V5, they run the best out of any locomotive that I've seen. Nothing juts out as weird or sounding off. It's smooth, it's quiet. Even back and forth in this little test section, I've had no issues. So one thing we will do with the locomotive unmuted, we'll put drive hold on and give it a notch 8 pull. So a quick note on the speakers. This is of course on the factory speaker volumes. If you want to adjust this you can, however you like. The Scaletrains dual cubes are really good, but to me, especially on GE locomotives, they sound a little tinny on the top end. Now if you turn it up and you change it around, it sounds a lot better, but if you do decide to replace the speakers, can't say enough for a Scale sound system speaker. That's my choice for doing Loc Sound GE files, and they sound phenomenal. And I don't think it'll be long before we see ES44s in his lineup either. But overall, a little tinny on the top end, but the sound output's good. It sounds crisp. It sounds like a Gevo should. So everything you want is there. Just to show you what I'm talking about with the sound, on the left is my MTH with a Lock 5 and a single 28mm in the fuel tank. And here's the Scaletrain. So here's 911 up first. One last thing I wanted to cover per the operation. This locomotive is heavy. This is the chunkiest ES44 I own, and I own Broadway, MTH, now Scaletrains. Haven't touched the Athearn, but this is a very hefty locomotive. You won't have to worry about it being weak on pulling. Very solid thunk getting it on the tracks. This is a very heavy mechanism. Again, it's proven with their Dash 9s and the Tier 4s, the mechanism and the weight are very, very good. So you will not have an issue pulling trains with this locomotive casting. Alright guys, and that covers about all the bases I wanted to touch in this video. I'm going to give you a few final thoughts, the price, and your overall value for the money on this locomotive. So first up is price and value. So these retail for $299.99 directly from Scaletrains. This is a lot for a 6-axle HO locomotive, but the detail, the paint, the sound, this is one of the coolest engines I've had the pleasure of owning. It looks fantastic, it weighs a ton, and it runs like a Swiss watch. That's all the boxes you could want on a locomotive, number one, of this price caliber, but also the level we've come to expect from Scaletrains in terms of being a top shelf manufacturer. In terms of getting hold of one of these, Scaletrains still has them on their site now, but I imagine the quantity set aside that's not pre-order is very, very limited. So if you want one, grab now, ask questions later. Your wallet's going to hurt for a little bit, but you'll have the first batch, and again, these locomotives are going to be fantastic. Also, stay tuned, because we're not done with just the single 1776. There's a couple more videos coming down the pipeline with the others in the fleet. So, just a little side note to stay tuned. Overall, though, I think this is a fantastic locomotive for the money. It feels, for paying a high price, this feels like it was worth the money. Only things I would really change: a little bit better speaker, give it volume, and the horns, of course. That's a minute thing, being lock sound. Always can do custom sound files suited to each locomotive. But it would have been nice, you know, factory sound file, having all three directly recorded from the locomotives and just going from there. So my final thoughts: if you can get a hold of this locomotive, or if you have it coming in on pre-order, you're going to love it. You can, of course... scratch. So for my final thoughts on this locomotive, this is an absolutely fantastic replica of CSX 1776. For Scaletrain's first batch of ES44s, these have set the bar high, and I mean very high. This is a fantastic locomotive. Now, my fingers are personally crossed for GE demonstrators, but we'll see what the cards hold. But this is an absolutely awesome chassis. The decoration looks fantastic. Detail is awesome. I'm happy with this purchase, and that's all you could really want, especially for a locomotive of this price caliber. But I thank you guys again for watching. I appreciate the views and support for always. And stay tuned, because there's a couple more videos coming out with both the 1776 and a few others in the series. So keep your eyes out. We're going to have some fun content coming. And I thank y'all again. So I'll see you next time.